Have you ever felt like you're playing a game, but no one gave you the rules? You show up, you try, you care, you do what you've been told: be kind, be honest, be patient, and yet, somehow you're always the one left behind. There's a meeting, a decision, a conversation, and you weren't even considered. There's that moment when someone less qualified, less honest, less invested wins. And you wonder, what did I miss? It feels like everyone else got a secret memo, a silent code passed around in whispers. And you're still playing fair in a game that rewards something else entirely. No, you're not paranoid. You're not overthinking. You're waking up. This isn't about being cynical. It's about realizing something no one warned you about. The world is not built to reward fairness. It rewards understanding. And the sooner you see that, the sooner everything starts to shift. But maybe you've always known, somewhere deep, in that quiet space behind your chest. You've sensed it, that ache, that question, that whisper. Why does goodness feel like weakness here? You gave, you stayed, you forgave, and in return you were left waiting, explaining, doubting yourself. Again, it's not because you were wrong, it's because you were unarmed. They never taught you how to defend your energy. They never showed you how to protect your silence. They only taught you how to be likable. But likable isn't powerful. The ones who move the pieces, they don't raise their voices. They don't beg. They observe. They adapt. They understand what most people refuse to see, that behind every polite exchange, there is a strategy. Behind every smile, a motive. Behind every choice, a calculation. And if you don't know the game, you are the game. So maybe it's time to unlearn what kept you small. Time to see what's been hidden in plain sight. Time to remember the part of you that has always watched, silently, waiting. Because your silence isn't emptiness, it's preparation. Imagine playing chess. You study the board, strategize each move, protect your king, sacrifice when necessary. You play by the rules, think 3 steps ahead, and still somehow you keep losing. Then you realize your opponent holds both sets of pieces. They move yours when you're not looking. They change the rules mid-game, and they smile, as if this was always how it worked. This is the invisible order, the one you were never meant to see. You were told to be good, that goodness would protect you, that truth would shield you, that virtue would reward you. But have you noticed? Being good doesn't guarantee you fairness. Telling the truth doesn't earn you loyalty. And living by ethics doesn't save you from betrayal. Because this world doesn't function on morality. It functions on understanding. Understanding power. Understanding masks. Understanding how most people don't seek truth. They seek advantage. They seek comfort. They seek control. And if your role is to always be honest, always be kind, always be available, you're not respected. You're useful, replaceable, expected. You become a function in someone else's plan. They don't need you strong. They don't need you awake. They need you predictable. So you stay in line. You wait your turn. You silence your instincts. And they reward you with just enough approval to keep you from leaving, just enough praise to keep you guessing, just enough guilt to keep you quiet. It's not personnel, it's design. Systems are built on predictability. Societies thrive on order. And individuals like you are easier to manage when they're obedient, agreeable, unaware. You were taught to fear power, so you never claimed yours. You were taught that silence is humility, so you mistook it for weakness. You were taught to be selfless, so they could use your selflessness to serve themselves. They told you to play fair in a game they never intended to play fairly. And when you finally ask, why do I always lose? The answer stings. It's not because you're not enough. It's because you were never meant to win. They never wanted you to rise. They just needed you to believe you could. They never wanted you strong. They needed you manageable. They never wanted you to win. They only needed you predictable. They called him a villain, a manipulator, the father of deception. But Machiavelli was never the villain. He was the mirror. He didn't invent the game. He revealed it. In a world where illusions pass as virtue, where people pretend to play fair while stabbing behind smiles, Machiavelli wrote the one book that didn't lie, The Prince. Most people misunderstood it. They still do. They quote it with disdain, with fear, as if it encourages cruelty. But the truth? It simply tells what no one wants to admit. This world is not ruled by kindness. It is ruled by understanding human nature. Machiavelli didn't teach how to be evil. He taught how to survive among those who are. He wrote in the language of raw truth, not ideals, not hopes, not dreams, truth. And one of his most quoted lines? It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. At first glance, it feels brutal, cold. But look closer. He wasn't telling you to be cruel. He was telling you to wake up, because love in the public sphere is conditional, fleeting, built on projection and expectation. But fear, respect, boundaries, commanded holds. Not fear as terror, not fear as abuse, but fear as clarity. The kind of presence that makes others think twice before trying to use you. The kind of presence that says, I am not here to be liked. I am here to be. Machiavelli knew what most people don't dare say aloud. That the world doesn't reward virtue unless it's useful. That people love strength but punish softness. That perception is more powerful than substance, and controlling the story often matters more than telling the truth. He was not teaching people to be monsters. He was teaching them how not to be prey. He understood the shadow long before psychology gave it a name. He saw the masks we wear, the games we play, the hunger for dominance disguised as diplomacy. He didn't mock it. He mapped it. His coldness? It was not cruelty. It was clarity. He stripped the sentiment from survival and said, Here, this is what power looks like when it stops pretending. And yes, it's unsettling, because it reflects something you already know, that when you were too nice, you were used, that when you told the truth, they twisted it, that when you waited, they moved on. So maybe Machiavelli wasn't the villain. Maybe he was the one brave enough to write what everyone else only dared whisper. He didn't tell you to become someone else. He told you to see clearly who everyone else already is. Because once you understand the game, you stop being its pawn. You stop chasing fairness and start choosing awareness. You stop needing to be loved to feel worthy, and you start commanding space without asking permission. That is not evil. That is evolution. You've seen it before. The quiet one in the office who always says yes. The friend who never complains, even when she's clearly drowning. The partner who swallows every insult with a smile just to keep the peace. They're the ones who keep everything running, who show up, who give, who stay calm when they should be screaming, who forgive when they should be gone. And yet, they're the first ones ignored, the first ones dismissed, the last ones anyone protects. Because in a world that rewards dominance, being good becomes a disguise, a survival tactic, a way to avoid conflict by making yourself small. This isn't kindness. It's self-erasure. You think you're keeping harmony, but really, you're teaching others how to treat you. You're signaling that your needs come last, that you won't resist, that you'll bend, break, disappear, just to be accepted. And that's when it happens. The manipulation doesn't come with screaming. It doesn't wear a mask of cruelty. It wears charm, sweetness, smiles. You're in a meeting. Your colleague smiles to your face, then claims your idea as their own. You say nothing because you don't want to seem petty. You're in a relationship. Your partner dismisses your feelings again. You apologize again, just to keep them from walking out. You call it being understanding, buying patient, buying mature. But it's not. It's abandonment of yourself and the people around you. They learn quickly that you'll tolerate more than you should, that your silence means permission, that your kindness is a tool they can use whenever it's convenient. Because here's the truth no one wants to say aloud. Being good is not a virtue. It's a shield. A shield to avoid being called difficult, a shield to avoid rejection, a shield to avoid the terrifying act of choosing yourself. It's easier to perform goodness than to risk being disliked. Easier to play small than to ask for what you need. Easier to adapt to others than to stand alone. But every time you do that, every time you betray yourself to make someone else comfortable, you lose a piece of who you are. And no one claps. No one thanks you. No one notices. Until there's nothing left. You burn quietly, behind smiles, behind helpfulness, behind that sentence you always say, "It's fine, I'm used to it." And one day you wake up and realize you've become invisible. Not because you don't exist, but because you trained the world not to see you. You weren't respected for your goodness. You were consumed by it. So look around. The ones who get ahead, they aren't always the smartest or the most skilled. They're the ones who dare to say no, who understand that boundaries aren't selfish. They're sacred. Being nice isn't the problem. Losing yourself to it is. Because here's the harshest truth of all. The nice ones burn in silence, and no one sees the ashes. You've been taught to avoid your shadow, to stay polite, be soft, keep the peace. They said darkness was dangerous, that rage is wrong, that ambition is selfish, that silence is weakness. So you buried your edge, you numbed your instincts. You put a mask on the part of you that knew exactly what was going on. And then you wondered why you kept getting played. But what if the problem isn't your shadow? What if the problem is that you've never learned how to use it? You don't need to fight harder. You need to play smarter. Machiavelli never feared the dark. He studied it. He understood that power doesn't come from pretending to be light. It comes from knowing how to move in the dark without losing your way. He said, "Know your enemies, but first know the enemy within." And he was right, because the first enemy is not them. It's the voice in your head that says you can't. The voice that says stay quiet, stay small, stay safe. That voice is not your conscience. It's your conditioning. It was built from years of trying to be good. From craving approval, from fearing rejection, from the wounds you weren't allowed to name, from the times you cried behind closed doors, then smiled in public because you didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable. But your discomfort never made them uncomfortable. Only your truth does. And that's why your shadow isn't dangerous. It's precise. It knows when to speak, when to move, when to walk away without explanation. It's the part of you that sees patterns, that feels tension, that recognizes when something is off before the damage is done. But to access it, you need to stop labeling your edge as a flaw. It's not aggression, it's awareness. It's not manipulation, it's mastery. It's not apathy, it's emotional clarity. And it begins with one small shift. Stop justifying your boundaries. Start trusting them. When someone disrespects you, you don't owe them an explanation for your distance. When a room feels wrong, you don't need to make yourself palatable. When your instincts scream, listen before you speak. The shadow doesn't need to attack. It observes. It waits. It recalibrates. Because not every battle deserves a response. Some just need your absence. And that is strategy. Your energy is not infinite. Every reaction you give is a withdrawal from your emotional bank. So ask yourself, who earns it? Who drains it? Who only comes around when they need something and disappears when you need someone? That's not connection. That's consumption. And your shadow knows the difference. But it only activates when you stop betraying it. When you stop apologizing for your gut feelings. When you stop choosing peace over truth. This isn't about becoming ruthless. It's about becoming selective. Ruthlessness is blind. Selectivity is power. And your power begins the moment you stop defending your softness and start integrating your sharpness. The part of you that doesn't beg. The part that doesn't chase. The part that doesn't need to be saved, seen, or approved. It just is. You don't need slogans. You don't need more affirmations. You need awareness. Because once you see the game, you don't have to fight every piece on the board. You just need to stop playing theirs. And that doesn't make you cold. It makes you conscious. Step back, not to surrender, but to see. Not to withdraw in fear, but to rise above the noise. Because real control is not about who shouts the loudest. It's about who listens longest, who waits, who watches, who understands. Mastery is quiet. You don't need to manipulate when you understand the mechanics. You don't need to dominate when you know how people operate. When you've studied the game long enough, you stop reacting. You stop explaining. You stop proving. You begin to observe. And observation is power in its purest form. The ones who chase validation, who crave applause, who rush to speak, they burn quickly. They act without data. They move without awareness. They play to win short rounds, but lose the match. But the one who watches, who lets others reveal themselves, that one builds something untouchable. Because when you understand human nature, when you stop projecting your kindness onto people who haven't earned it, you no longer get caught in their chaos. You remain still, and in that stillness, everything becomes clear. You begin to notice what others miss. The silence in their voice, the tension in their smile, the shift in their eyes. You begin to read not just what they say, but what they avoid saying. You read the pauses, the edits, the excuses. And suddenly, nothing surprises you. You stop giving energy to battles that don't matter. You stop defending yourself to people who never cared to understand. You stop trying to be chosen. Because when you choose to stand outside the game, you see it for what it really is, a performance. A loop, a repetition of patterns. And when you stand still long enough, those patterns reveal themselves. You don't need to guess intentions. They become obvious. You don't need to demand truth. It leaks through the cracks. That is the position of the master. Detached, but present. Available, but untouchable. You don't rise by pushing harder. You rise by knowing when to wait, when to pivot, when to walk away, not in anger, but in understanding. Let others rush. Let them seek attention, applause, control. Let them exhaust themselves trying to win a game they don't understand. You sit back, and when the time is right, you move once. Precisely. Because real power doesn't show up frantic. It shows up certain. And certainty is built in silence, in distance, in presence. So the next time they underestimate your stillness, let them. Because still waters do not reflect weakness. They reflect mastery. And he who observes eventually rules. What would happen if you stopped reacting and started watching. Not watching to judge, not watching to plan your next move, just watching as if the world were a mirror, as if every face, every moment, every silence held something meant to show you more of yourself. Can you feel how different that is? There's a shift that happens when you stop needing to respond to everything, when you let others reveal themselves without rushing to protect, to explain, to prove. You begin to move from impulse to insight, from defense to direction. You start hearing the unsaid. You start seeing the patterns. And more importantly, you start recognizing your own shadow, the parts of you that once kneeled to stay accepted, that once played small to avoid rejection, that once wore kindness like a costume. But now you know better. The game hasn't changed, but your role in it has. You no longer need to win every moment. You just need to understand it. You no longer need to shine all the time. You just need to stop dimming yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that shift is already happening inside you. Maybe that voice you used to silence is finally whispering again. So take a breath and tell me, what shadow have you met in yourself lately? Drop it in the comments. No need to explain it perfectly. Just name it. Maybe someone else will see theirs in yours. Maybe your story helps them feel a little less alone in theirs. Because this space, it's not about perfection, it's about presence. It's where silence becomes strength, where observation becomes clarity, where shadows stop hiding and start guiding. And if something moved inside you while listening, if something stirred, even quietly, don't let it stay buried. Let it speak. Let it be seen. And if this video met you somewhere real, like, share, and subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but for the version